Hello everyone, and welcome to another video about Submittable. The goal of this video is, now that you've gotten a bit of a tour of what this website is like when you are using it as a submitter, is to flip the script a little bit and let you see kind of what it is that editors see when they receive materials. So how we walk through and what your submission is going to look like. In the next video, I'm going to walk you through what we found in a submission that we liked and that we accepted. So this is really a short video that's just meant for you to get to sort of, again, as the title of our course is, to sort of sweep back this curtain that surrounds what it is editors do when they receive your submissions. So my magazine is called the Gateway Review, and this is our submittable page. From the editorial side. So as the owner of the magazine, I have a particular submittable account. There's also a submittable account for my student readers, but I'm going to just show you from this perspective of the lead editor, and that'll give you a sense of what it is that we do with submissions. So they're currently ordered by, so a lot of this is going to look sort of similar to what is happening in a submitter's account. So you've got your submission. Here I've got the name of the submitters, and I can't really hide those names, but I don't think it's a big deal. What it is they submitted, and these ones are organized by date. So these are the most recent grouping, and even though there's a lot of declines, there are some acceptances in there. So you can see what we did with that, and we can see, excuse me, to whom it was assigned. So as submissions come in, what I will tell you is each editorial submittable account is linked to an email address. So as submissions come in, I get notified that those submissions have arrived. So what I really just want to show you in this video, though, is what are some of the things that we do and what does this submission look like from my perspective as the lead editor. So one of the options, so I have no filters on right now, so I've just got a list of all of the submissions. In the last 5 years that we've existed, we've received about 1,500 items. For a long time, we only ever accepted fiction. Then we started accepting poetry. We also take cover art. So this is a mishmash of a lot of different kinds of things. We've published about 10 issues. And so if you just averaging things out, to get a sense of how competitive we are, we receive about 100 submissions or so, give or take, between 100 and 150 across all categories per issue. And we end up publishing between 10 and 15 items, so about a 10% acceptance rate, which is actually not bad. So if you submit to this magazine, your odds aren't terrible. There are certainly lots of magazines out there that have far lower acceptance rates. My favorite example, and I'm really not saying this to terrify you and make you think you're never going to get anything published, is a magazine called One Story. They're called that because each issue is literally one story, and they publish about 12 to 13 issues a year. It's only accepting about 12 or 13 stories, and they receive about 300 a week in their 8-month reading period. So they're obviously got an incredibly low acceptance rate. They're definitely one of those tier 1 magazines that we've talked about in terms of being super competitive. Okay, so as you can see, you end up with this just long list of things. We don't currently have any unread submissions simply because as I'm recording this video, we're in one of our non-reading periods. We're not in a period where we accept submissions at the moment. But let me just show you a couple things anyway. So this is my list, and so if I click on, we'll just click on the first submission. I'm not going to show you the actual, well, I'll show you how we get to it. So this is what it looks like from the editorial perspective. So over here on this side is any sort of communication. So we get a copy of their cover letter. I'll say more about that in a second. And then our automated response. Most magazines, by the way, that use Submittable, you're going to receive an automated response from them when you submit. And so we have one set up, and then when we respond, we sent our decline letter to them. So this will tell you the title of the work. So whatever it is that you put in as the title and when you submit, that's what's going to show up here. And this is where their cover letter will show up. So we'll be able to read that and see it very, very clearly, very front and center. So again, this is, we talked about the cover letter is really your first impression you're giving an editor. So we kind of have to see it before we even read your work. So I'm going to have a sort of sense of you beforehand. Now, I will say that I don't always read these in advance. I kind of take a quick glance at them I don't really read them with incredible detail before I open their document. But so we get to the items. So then we get to the files. So if I click on the file, it will open, and I can see it. I'm kind of moving this around. I don't want to make give away this person's poetry. But so this is where their document will show up, and then I can read it, and then move forward, and I can go to the next one. And so you see, it kind of does be. So the one thing I want to point out is this does sort of become this assembly line sort of thing, where physically on the computer and on the screen, your work is not going to stand out. So you've got your writing has to be quite good. Again, you got to make sure that your work is standing out in the way that you want it to. And then like I said, since we're not accepting submissions, I can't really show you how we accept them and decline them. But actually, let me come back in here. Up here, when we want to accept and decline things, we can click on these buttons. And I don't think this is going to show it. So what it will let me do is it will let me send a message. And so we do have some templates. So we can use these templates. I'm not going to click on this because I don't want to accidentally accept something I've already declined. But I could send this, and then down here I would click accept and send response. And that's how it gets sent out. And I can, of course, make changes in there. So typically when thinking about what kind of response you've gotten, especially in terms of rejection letters, if you get an acceptance letter, you know that your work's gotten accepted. In these rejection letters, we've got these templates already set up, and so that's why if you get the thanks for sending your work to us, unfortunately it doesn't meet our needs, you've probably just gotten one of their form rejections. But if you get something a little more personalized, it's possible in Submittable to go in and add extra detail to those rejection letters or acceptance letters or whatever it is that you want to do and say to a submitter. So that's really what we see from the side of the editorial group. So it is, there's a term that you may hear at some point or may have heard at some point called the slush pile. That term comes from when most magazines were still accepting things by mail, and they would end up with these just stacks of manuscripts that they had to kind of slush through and read. And this is sort of the 21st century version of the slush pile, is that there's this long list of things being submitted to magazines. And the reality is that they do sort of tend to start running together. So your goal is to really make what you've written stand out. I mean, you can see on here, green is accepted and red is declined. You can see there's so much more declined work in here. Let's do a little test here. So in fiction, we have two different forms of accepting fiction, but we'll just use this for the moment. If we look at declined fiction, I can tell you approximately how many pieces we rejected in the last year. So these all in 2019, just going back, we have a 2-month open reading period. So all of this, all the way down to here, so we had at least 100, about 100, because this is when we opened up for submissions. It was on January 15th. So about 100 pieces. But then if I go up here and I look at the acceptance rate in fiction, we'll get rid of these declines, and we'll try to see if it'll let me actually open accepted. From this period, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 pieces that we accepted. And actually, there were a couple that we ended up not printing because of other complications that happened. But so you can see, so we're about an 8% acceptance rate, 8 to 10% acceptance rate. So that's about what you're looking at in terms of getting your work accepted by these magazines. Like I said, this was just designed to give you a little look at what is it that's going on the editor's side when they do this. And of course, I can assign things to my other readers, and that's so when I click this, when I assign things to other readers, that's when that status in your account is going to move from received to in progress. Or if I just open your document, even if I'm not making a decision about it, that's what will trigger that. So you don't really want to use that as the guidepost for whether something is really getting read yet, because it's not necessarily doing that. Okay, I hope you found this informative and helpful for seeing what is it that the editors are going to see when they look at your work. Like I said, the next video will actually take a look at one of these stories, and I'll sort of walk you through how they stood out, how they became one of the 8 that we accepted.